Welcome to the Figma Bootcamp. I'm AOA, and in this series, we're going to transform you from a complete Figma beginner to a confident designer. Whether you are looking to create stunning UI or understand how to navigate Figma overall and build interactive prototypes, this is for you. Today, in our very first lessons, we are going to explore Figma's interface, which is the foundation for everything you will create. Understanding where everything lives will make your design process much smoother as we progress through more advanced topic. Before we explore the interface itself, let's just quickly cover what Figma is. Compared to other traditional tools like Photoshop or Sketch, Figma lives on the browser. Means that your work is automatically saved, you can collaborate with other people live in the browser, and it has the ability to not require a very powerful computer. You can think of Figma as a digital Canva with superpowers that combines the flexibility of design tools like Photoshop or Sketch with the collaboration features of Google Docs and the prototyping capabilities of specialized UX tools like Axer, all in one place. So when you first log into Figma, you'll land on the homepage, which is right there. This is your command center for your design. You have access to your recent files, which in the beginning, I think if it's your first time, you will have 3 files. On the left side, you have your team management elements, which contains your team name, the draft, all your projects, your trash, and your admin settings. Underneath that, you have steer project. In order to steer a project, you just need to click on the star icon on the top right corners. From here, you have the ability to create a new design file, FigJam file, or Figma slide. You also have the ability to import a Figma file or a sketch file. If you are transitioning from a sketch designer to becoming a Figma designer, you can just drop your sketch files and have them converted into a Figma file. So let's start by creating a design file. This is the interface you will be laying in most days. The center part is called a Canva. It is some sort of an infinite space where all your design will be. Not really infinite, but it's 300,000 pixel wide, which is infinite enough. In its current form, Figma is split into 3 elements. The left side, which is your pages and layers. The right side, which is the inspector based on the current selected elements. And the bottom side, which is the floating toolbar with all of the most used elements. Let's focus on the left side first. On here, you have the ability to see the Figma menu, the name of the current file, which right now is called untitled, and we don't want that. You can just click on it and rename that. For me, it's going to be Bootcamp. You can see that it's placed in the drafts. Underneath that, you have the file definition or the assets. Assets is something that will require its own video, which I think is the 3rd one in the series. Underneath that, you have your pages, with your first page being page 1. As always, that's not the name we want. Let's double click it to rename that introduction and then press enter. Then create a new page by clicking the plus button. Then underneath this, we have layers, and anything that will be added inside of the Canva is going to be popping here. Let's do that quickly. Right now, I create a rectangle and I have rectangle 1 around here. Layers have multiple options. You can see their icons, which represent what they look like. You have weird shapes. There will be weird shapes here. As a name, a lock, which define if it's a lock layer or not, and an eye to see if it's visible or not. You can 100% rename them by either double clicking them, or you can do Command R to rename your elements. On the other side, we have the inspector. It is by default on the design. Next to that, you have the prototype tab, which the play button is the launch prototype. The share is for sharing with other team members, and the profile picture, which is my profile picture right now, will be populated with more people if you have more people active in the same file at the same time, which is one of the collaboration features of Figma. Underneath that, we have the file-specific settings, which means the background is currently 1E, 1E, 1E. That's for that background. The local variables that has its own video, the local styles, same thing, and the export features. At the bottom, and lastly, we have the tool which contains the move tool, the frame tool, shape, end tool, text, comments, and actions. We have a full video, which is the next one, to explain each and every one of these elements. Dev mode is, as the name implies, mostly for devs, but that kind of changes the interface. You can access it with doing Shift D or just clicking on this toggle. That will modify the bottom floater for the tools, but also the interface on both sides. On the left side, you will still have layers, but there is a bit of a better understanding and definition for the devs. In the right side, for the inspector, you will have the ability to export and generate code based on the content that you have selected. Right now, I have a rectangle selected, and Figma is intelligent enough to give me a rectangle Swift UI code. I could generate that with other type of code by selecting if I want this in HTML, in CSS, in Tailwind. It's an option, but I have this as a default. Also gives you, as a dev, the ability to get like Xcode and all other properties if I had other properties defined here. This also gives you two other tools, the measurement tool and the annotation tool. Notations are pretty useful into making sure that we can see if there is things specifics from the designers to the devs, but it's not the most used element. Usually the designers are going to leave comments in places and devs are going to reply to these comments, or vice versa. The comment looks like this. I can define that it's linked to something and say, this is a rectangle, and then press enter. My comment is going to be around here. And for my designer, that is going to be on the right panel where they can say, oh yeah, that is a rectangle and not a square. Good enough. Let's fix that. As a main point, I want to go over the pages section. It is recommended to have a first page for your wireframe, a second page for your high fidelity designs and all of that. Even though this tool is going to have its own video, which is the next one, the frames are basically what is going to be the most important thing in the Figma Bootcamp. You will use frames for everything, and you can think of them as divs or container for the entirety of your design. When you click on the frame tool, you will have presets, but you can also click and drag to have the content. And these can be nested in each other. So I can have a frame with a frame inside that adds like a different color scheme, like a container inside of a container inside of a container. That is an option. It will define the boundary of your design, which is really good. It will also help us for prototyping in some of the later video. Once we are here, we have the move tool, which is one of the navigation tools that we need to use every day. You can use the V tool, which is this one, move tool, with the V key to click and move element across the Canva. Or you can use, if you just want to navigate the view, you can take the spacebar, press, click, drag. If you release, it's not hand tool anymore. You can also access the hand tool by clicking on the tiny arrow next to the V tool and then selecting it. Or if you have scroll wheel, you can use the scroll wheel, click and drag. Lastly, you have zooms. Zoom are really useful because you can just press the Z key and click to zoom in, or you can click, drag with the Z key enabled, release and zoom into the selection. One last tidbit is going to be, if you have multiple elements on your Canva, let's say you have working on this, you forgot that you have someone else in that funnel, you can do Shift 1 to zoom out the Canva to showcase everything on it. That will be useful. You can also select something and do Shift 2 to zoom in on that element specifically. So Shift 1, big picture, Shift 2, specific selection. And if I had selected just that rectangle, right rectangle at the top, it would bring me there. Good. One last tidbit of navigation and organization thing is going to be file management. So you have your draft with everything that you have created, but it's not part of a project just yet. You can think of these as folders. I call them folders all the time. So if you hear me say folders, I'm talking about projects. But you can have a project password, a project per client if you have multiple clients. And that's a way to organize your files and your content Essentially, if you wanted to share this specific element with a specific amount of people on the team, you could define that only 3 people in your team can access this file or this folder, which would be the style guide folder, for example, and restrict your devs or your CEO to access things that they are not supposed to see. And there you have it, your introduction to Figma's interface. We've covered the overall workspace layout, how to organize your files, the Canva and where the design will live, and how to organize your design pages and frames. Navigation techniques of using the V tool and the hand tools, the zooms with Shift 1 and Shift 2. And in our next video, we'll dive deeper into Figma's powerful tools and start creating our first designs. Now that you know where everything is, you'll be ready to start bringing your ideas to life. If you found this video helpful, as always, don't forget to subscribe for the entire Figma Bootcamp. And if you want early access to the video and future video, plus downloadable files like the Figma files and resources, check out the Patreon. See you in the next video where we explore Figma's tool and create our first design elements. Bye.